Uh-huh.
So let's get started, and it will be a very small presentation. And initially, we'll look into what is language models and get an introduction to NGRAM, that is statistical language models, as well as one of the neural language models, RNN-based models. Recording started. Okay. So this will be the roadmap for the presentation. And what exactly is a language model? So when you see a sentence in a language, say say there is a sentence called say sentence is the cat is small. How do you identify like it's a valid English sentence or not? So
Broadly, there are English rules like grammatical vocabulary and all.
yeah, the grammatic rules like the so whether it follows a proper syntax and the vocabulary like is the words are from proper English vocabulary, and also some semantic aspects like whether it's making sense or not, uh, and uh, also the language will be having different usages which will be widely used and some usages which people won't use. So so you can also look at like whether it's following uh, the usage which is being used or which is being popular. So we for the natural language processing tasks, we define some measure or some system which can do this validation. So that is called the language model. So language model gives computes a probability of sequence of words. Sequence of words means you give a sentence to this language model. It gives you a number between 0 and 1, and 1 means it's highly probable in that language, and if it's towards 0 it means less probable. So it's like language model is some learned probable system which can tell you like whether this particular sequence of word belongs to this language or not, or is a valid sentence or a valid so sentence in this particular language or not. And usually people also define this language model in another way, like it, it can give a probability of the current word or the previous sequence of words. So if you consider the sentence like the cat is, and you will have the probability for all possible words, and whichever has the maximum probability, say if it's small, then you can have a next word prediction, like the next word will be a small. So people define the language model in this fashion also, like the which give the some system which gives the probability of next word. And where do this language model usually used in natural language processing tasks?
Like when we type, hello?
Yeah,
Yeah. You were explaining it predicting the next upcoming word based on the previous. Like, does that also work like in your phone when you're typing something, the words are like the next word is suggested, right? Is it the same kind of thing?
there also the language models will be used internally, and along with it, there will be some other search-based systems as well. So yeah,
Like your history, what you have typed and how you have typed.
yeah. So it
Oh,
will be an augmented system. Like there will be language model as well as some extra information there.
mhm.
And
Okay.
I mean, this is that thing is how you practically implement a solution to a problem. And yeah, for I mean, just for the explanation purpose, I can use that example like it's I mean, it's an example of usage of language model.
Okay.
And this is the same thing like you have the spelling correction, which is similar to the next word prediction when you are typing, and in speech recognition, like you convert these speech features detected from this speech waveform, and then you convert that into phonemes and then words, and then you need like whether you will have for each position you will have some n number of options for a word. So how do you determine like which word to be used? So you will have use this language model and figure out which word gives you the maximum probability of overall sentence. The same thing is, I mean, the similar problem is solved in machine learning, I mean, machine translation, and even the optical character recognition, handwriting recognition. So wherever you detect, I mean, convert from one mode of the language communication to other mode, where there you can use this language model to have a concrete uh, overall sentence probability. So these are the two, I mean, two sub problems which this language model can solve. Like it can detect like whether the word ordering is correct or not. So if you are doing a machine translation task, like the different languages will have different word ordering, different syntactic structures. So if you are translating one word from, I mean, you are doing a parallel translation, like if you translate each word, looking up some vocabulary lookup, and then you need to, I mean, have a proper ordering of this word in the target language. So this language model can be used to, I mean, identify which ordering of the words makes sense. Like the cat is small and the small the cat is. In that, the cat is small will be having more probability than the small the cat is. And also the word choice. The like the you have a sentence like the walking home after school and walking house after school. House and home has similar meanings, synonyms are they are synonyms, but the walking home is the regularly used usage. So now see like how do you create these language models, and what are the different language modeling ideas available. So one is a traditional language modeling, which is called statistical language modeling also. So it's like you have a large amount of uh, text data, which people call corpus, or is plural corpora, and you learn some uh, statistical inputs from these corpora. Like you will count the number of words, or you will count the uh, subsequence, and you will create a language model which does this job of giving the overall probability of a given sequence of words. So usually what people do is people don't do it for the entire sequence of words. They will have a limit, like they will do for uh, sequence of n grams or n words. So that's we have this Markov assumption, like the current word only depends on n previous words. So I mean, it's not a correct assumption, but for the computational purposes, computational, I mean, not to increase the computational overhead, they limit uh, the sequence length they are analyzing. So here you have this probability of W1, W2 up to WMS sequence probability. And with this, the chain rule of probability, you can uh, represent this thing as a sum of uh, not the sum, this is a product of these conditional probabilities. Like say if you have the sentence like the cat is small, you can probability of cat is small can be written as probability of small given the cat is sorry, start with the probability of small into probability of small given the cat is into the probability of is given the cat into the probability of cat given the and I mean the probability of the coming first. So you can write this whole thing as a product of these conditional probabilities, and you have this assumption like you will only consider n previous sequence. So you will have some kind of moving window of n words, and you move along this sentences, and you uh, find out these n-gram probabilities. And there are these n-grams you can see like this from there is if you are considering only one word at a time, that's called unigram probability. And in that what you do is you will have this very large text data, and you will chop each, each of the word, and you find out the count of each unique word, and you can calculate the unigram probability. Say you are considering the and the this word the occurs um, some say 1 million times in this corpus. You will have this that count divided by total number of words in this corpus, then you get the probability of the this unigram probability is also called the bag of words, as it's not considering any sequence information, it's just considering how many times each word is occurring this text data. And bigram you can see it considers two consecutive words, like say here W1 and W2 are the subsequence of two words, and you can calculate this probability of W2 coming after W1, which can be represented as a conditional probability of W2 given this W1, and that you can calculate like the count of this how many times W1 and W2 are coming in sequence in the whole text data divided by how many times W1 is appearing. In the same way, you can calculate the trigram probabilities, like the you are considering three word sequences, say W1, W2, and W3, and you can calculate this probability of W3 coming after a subsequence W1 and W2. Like you count these three word sequences W1, W2, and W3 divided by how many times this W1 and W2 are coming in this text data. And with this you can I mean calculate this language model, the whole probability of all the sentences appearing this particular language. So if you cover good enough text data, you will have good enough data. But the thing is, you will have a very large language model in terms of the storage areas or the memory used, because this sequences, let's say trigram sequences, maybe a very large number of items, and you have to store these items as well as the count for these items. So it may get very large based on how big your training data is. And also you have to have a search approach to search through these sequences while you are performing certain tasks in machine translation or whatever the NLP tasks which are using this language models. And then comes the neural language models. It reduces the memory usage issue which was there in this statistical traditional language models. So we can let's look at this recurrent neural networks, which will be the backbones, or which is the backbone used for creating these language models. So recurrent neural networks are kind of a structure which has this what recurrence, like the uh, which feeds some input from output to itself, and there is a this HT is called the hidden state of this recurrent neural network, and XT is the input vector. So there'll be an input vector, and there'll be a feedback, and there'll be an output. And we in the previous lecture we have seen how to represent words as vectors. Like one way is like using a one-hot representation, where you will have each word represented by a vector of length which is equal to the vocabulary length, and wherever the position of the word is, like the we'll pre-assign the word positions, like the first position will be assigned to the first, second position will be assigned to cat or something like that. And the vectorization is like that, wherever, I mean, if it's a cat, the second position will be 1 and all others will be 0. And there are other ways of vectorizing this inputs as well, input words as well, like the you can use word embeddings, which can also give the vector representation of each words. And so consider like these words, whatever words are in this vocabulary can be represented in an n length vector. And now you can this you can compute the hidden state of this using this method. Like you will have a weight matrix, and you multiply the previous hidden state, and you concatenate with the product of another weight matrix and the input vector, and you pass it through a sigma function. So it uses this whole thing between 0 and 1, and you will have this thing again multiplied by a weight vector, weight matrix, and pass through a softmax. So what the softmax does is like it converts it to a something similar to a probability output from a probability distribution. Like the whole vector, the whole elements of the vector can be, when you sum up the elements of the vector, it will add up to 1, and the each of these elements will be between 0 and 1. So we define the language modeling problem as a next word prediction problem. So where you have this x1 up to xt, and you will be predicting the probability for, or you'll be uh, computing the probability for xt plus 1. Xt plus 1 is vj some particular word or no. So it's like a exactly like a classification problem, where if it's a next word, whatever the most probable next word is, it will have the highest number among these output vector. And so for whole the computation, you will have some h0, which is say for first hidden state, you will assign some uh, you will initialize the vector to some either random initialization or zero initialization, uh, and you can look at this weight matrices, which will be the your end result or the train model. So you learn these weight matrices through back propagation. So for that, you have to define some uh, error measures, like the how much the model is, I mean, while training, how much the model is differing from expected output. So as you it's like used in a so cross entropy loss is one of the ways in which you can create this measure, which is used while the in all the classification tasks where you will have this output between 0 and 1. So your output vector will be having numbers which are between 0 and 1, and you will be picking up the uh, things which are having highest value or highest number. So you can look at this y tj is will be the actual uh, probability or actual probability for that particular class, and then your predicted value, and you are summing it over the whole vocabulary. And if you are hello, yeah.
Yeah. So what is exactly cross entropy? Because like when we see there are different type of losses, like cross entropy is one of them. Normal loss is one of them. There are three, four more type of losses I have read about. So what exactly is difference between these? Means what is cross entropy exactly?
So look at it from the practical point of view, like you in your output vector, like which is y here the y tj. This thing is of the size of vocabulary. So it's a column vector having length of the vocabulary, and this so each of these elements in this vector will be between 0 and 1, because you are applying a softmax function. And in that case, say you are say your actual probability of a particular class, say you are predicting this the cat is small, and in the actual case the small should have the probability 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
And small is so you are expecting a output vector where the position corresponding to small is 1 and all others are 0.
Okay.
Any deviation from this needs to be penalized, so it should increase the this particular loss value, and then you can back propagate this loss to adjust your weights. And say your predicted probability for this thing is 1, and say y tj is 1, and log of y sorry your actual probability is 1 and the predicted probability is 0, then this whole thing becomes an infinity log of 0. So it's a high, I mean this value becomes very high. So you need to do a good adjustment in your weight to decrease this value. Say consider like this is 1 and this is also 1. Then this thing becomes 0. Then it means you are predicting this correct. So that's the, I mean, yeah.
Uh, yeah. So, like, there is any criteria we choose from this various types of losses, or these are predefined? Like, it doesn't matter whatever type of loss you choose, right?
No, in this case, you are choosing this cross entropy loss because it's the your output is between 0 and 1, and
Mm-hmm.
like this is a probability distribution. By definition, cross entropy loss is like which detects the difference between two probability distributions. Your
Okay.
one distribution is your actual the probability distribution, and your predicted probability distribution. So you are identifying how much it's differing from each other. And the
Okay.
case where you will be having values between say -1 and 1, then you
Hmm.
use some other loss like hinge loss or something.
Okay. And what is this perplexity? Perplexity.
one measure which is used in what validating the language models. So you like this whole evaluation will be done over the entire text corpus, and so this thing you are doing it for some t times. Say t
Mhm.
is number of the length of the text, and uh, your perplexity means like this is a measure like 2 raised to this thing, this j, and you need this measure needs to be smaller for good language models, because
Okay.
so you should be having this thing this thing minimum. So if you want to compare two language models, you will compute the perplexity for the same text data. You train on the same text data, and you can compute the perplexity, and you can compare these two language models. It's some way like the intuitive thing,
Okay.
like some way like the you. So at any point you are predicting the next word. If you are getting the probability like the all the vocabulary words are possible, then it's too much perplex system. So it has a very high degree of freedom. Like it can be anything. Like it hasn't learned anything from the learned anything through training. And if it's slow, like it has some certain it may have learned some certain biases like this. The cat after the cat is the small will be only the small will be possible, or some or n number of only the n number of words out of the whole vocabulary is possible. So that's the some intuitive understanding about the perplexity.
Okay.
Like the this if it's this thing is 0, 2 raised to 0 is 1. It means like the for every situation you will have only kind of a one possible solution, and it's predicting it with probability 1. uh, Next, to be continued, there is some issues in RNNs which needs to be discussed, and how those issues can be fixed. And then there is this new language models based on transformers. For that, we'll have some introduction to transformer networks as well. And any queries, any doubts in this?
So, where you will be using additional methods, and where you will be using this recurrent neural networks? Any specific applications?
So it's it evolved through time. Like the first came this a rational approach of creating grammatic structures using vocabularies and all those. Then came this statistical approach of you have if you have large number of text data, you will train your model. You will find out some statistical information from this, and you create the language model. Then came this neural networks, recurrent neural networks. The first approach is like the rational one is someone has to, I mean, give give the values for each probability. Like if you are using some grammatic structure, grammatic system like the probabilistic context free grammars, you have to give for each option what is the chance of occurring it, like how probable each thing is like. And the statistical thing learns it by itself from the data. And but the thing is the statistical models can be very big, very large, of the order of GVs if you are training it on the data which is of the order of GVs. Like there'll be that many number of combinations, and you have to store all those combinations and the counts of all those things. And then came the this recurrent neural network based approach, where you only have to store these weight information like the WHH, WHX, and WS, three matrices which of this dimension, and you need to store like which is being reused for each time step. You have to train these and identify what are the numbers which are working perfectly, and then you save it as a model. So it's a model size will be smaller. And then came this the one problem with this recurrent neural networks is like uh, there is something called vanishing gradient or exploding gradient problem. Like you are back in your back propagation, there'll be a lot of uh, multiplication of gradients, and at one point, if some gradient is very small, you won't have enough a large enough value so that your weight updates will be happening in very small increments, and you want the system won't learn quickly. And also there is a problem of exploding gradients, where the gradients can go very big, and your product of these gradients will be very big, and then again the numbers will won't be you won't be able to store the numbers in memory, or it will go beyond the representability of this your whatever the uh, fixed bit system of your computer is, like that it may go beyond the representation of 32 bits, say if you are using a 32-bit computer. So then there'll be a problem of I mean a practical problem. So we will look into those two problems in the next lecture, and we'll also have some discussion on how those things can be rectified in RNNs, and then we'll look into the transformer-based models like GPT or other attention-based models.
Are the traditional models still used nowadays? Like in some.
Yeah, people are using that models also. Like if you are using, I mean, machine translation, you or speech recognition. There are tools which people, I mean, even nowadays use. Like there is a tool called IRSTLM or SRILM. These are for creating language models, and they have a pipeline for creating these statistical models as well, Ngram models. And if you search for Google Ngrams, they give this Ngram uh, information which they have learned from whatever text data they have.
And the n-gram models, right? Like this unigram, bigram, trigram. So like which is the most optimal like nth like gram? Like
Uh, Theoretically, you have bigger the n is, uh, that gives the good. That's
the
good
best.
system. Like you have seen before, we maybe have made this Markov assumption. It was like the whole sequence. The but the you need a large enough corpora which covers all the variations, or which has all the sequences. Like if you are if say consider like if in your text the cat is never have occurred, but the cat appeared once. So you had this information of the cat being occurring in this particular language, but the information about the cat is, which is a trigram occurring this corpus, is not captured from training on this given corpus. So that kind of situation may happen. Like you need a very large corpus which may have this all the that particular n-gram you have fixed. So otherwise it will be like the out of vocabulary theme, like out of this n-gram never appeared on your training. Then your count for it is 0. But uska subsequences in this n-gram has occurred in this is may have occurred in your system or occurred in your training data. What's the point?
Yeah. One more thing, like if the value of n is very low, then it'll take time to probably calculate the probability. But if the n is very high, then there may be some processing issues, right?
Yeah, say and it's fine. So your training. I mean, after you train, your model will be having all the 5 length sequences and its count. So whatever is 5 length sequences appeared in your training data and its count. And you at the decoding time, you will be searching through these indices and finding out the count and then computing something. And so if the n becomes large, the probability of you finding that exact sequence in this index becomes very less. Or if your n is very small, this index can also, I mean, length of the index can increase. But I mean, theoretically, you won't be able to properly calculate the sequence uh, probability, but you are calculating uh, something which is closer to that value based on this Markov assumption.
Okay. Does the neural language model also train with the help of corpuses?
Yeah, like this, you will have a sequence. Consider you are having the cateys. So you feed first vector for the, and this HT will be calculated, and the BN output, which will be should be a probability vector predicting the next word in the sequence. And then you get compute the error here and back propagate the errors and adjust the weights, which are these 3 weights. Uh, numbers in these 3 weight matrices, and then again feed the next word uh, cat, and so on. Like you do it for the very large number of corpus, and you learn these weight matrices. So these weight matrices will are the comprise your model, which will be saved and reused again. And these 2 images, like the first one, you just showing as a structure, and then this is the unrolled version of the same thing, power t-1 t and t+1 time steps. Anything else?
No, not from myself.
Then ठीक to be continued. So next session is taken by whom?
I think Pallavi.
Okay, ठीक Okay, then thank you for your time. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.